Early lock time for today in MLB DFS with the main slate set to lock at 1:05 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for some action later on tonight, we will talk about the after-hours slate at the end of the show. If you want a timestamp for that, check out the episode description. But we're going to break down this 5-game main slate and get you ready for what should be a fun day of baseball over at FanDuel.com. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sotis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Thursday's 5-game main slate with locks set for 1:05 p.m. Eastern for today. Again, if you want some thoughts on the after-hours slate, check out the episode description to get a timestamp there if you're listening to us after 1:05 p.m. Eastern. No big weather notes here for the main slate, so we'll be good to dive on in. Break down this slate here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We, of course, are also over on the FanDuel YouTube page with the solo shot every weekday, and now on FanDuel TV Plus on Amazon Fire TVs, Apple TV, and Roku as well. So if you want to watch us in the video version, now able to do so both on YouTube and on FanDuel TV Plus. You can also find Up and Adams, Run It Back, and all the other elite FanDuel TV shows there in the same place. So if you're listening for the podcast version, go subscribe there. Leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you like what you hear. Baseball season is in full swing, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball trademarks used with permission. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Arizona. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. Or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Massachusetts, gamblinghelplinema.org. Or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview here for this Thursday main slate. Blake Snell checks in with the highest salary on FanDuel. He's at $10,800, followed by Joe Ryan at $10,500. Bryce Elder is $99 with Aaron Nola at $93. Then we have JP Sears and Logan Allen as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, this is one of those unique slates for DFS where I think our cash game option and tournament option for pitchers should be separate, because there are guys who fit very different roles and have very different ranges of outcomes. The tournament guy will be Blake Snell. So we'll start things off with him and then talk about the cash game guy later on. The reason that Snell is not a cash game guy is because he can make you a little skittish, and I think we should still be skittish with Blake Snell. But for tournaments, we want upside, and Snell right now has untouchable upside relative to guys on this slate. He's facing the Giants. That's a high strikeout, low walk matchup with a 27% strikeout rate against lefties and a 7% walk rate. They average just 3.81 pitches per plate appearances against lefties, which is a low number. You know, you're looking around 4 there usually, so lower number for the Giants than most teams. And that's a huge thing for Snell, who is still pretty inefficient with his pitches, and it does give him a boost to face a team that is not patient at the plate. And Snell has been throwing harder recently. His velo has been up for his past 5 starts. And the old high strikeout Blake Snell has come with that increased velo. He has a 2.98 skill interactive ERA in that time with a 39% strikeout rate. Batted ball data has been pretty good too. Now, that does not mean it will stick around. I want to make that very clear because he is very erratic. But Snell did make one of those 6 starts against the Rays, maybe a little revenge game factor there, but if he can do that, I feel like I can have faith in him. So is it risky to use Blake Snell in daily fantasy when he is very popular? Absolutely. Is it still a good decision to use him for tournaments today? Yes, I think it is. Nobody can touch his ceiling. So Snell is going to be the top tournament pitcher of the day. And I think that we can feel pretty good about that. So for tournaments specifically, Blake Snell is your guy. For cash games, I don't mind dipping down to a value play and going Logan Allen. Allen, the reason I'm not getting here for tournaments above Snell is not the biggest strikeout guy, especially compared to Blake Snell. And that typically makes Allen less appealing for DFS. But Allen has been a very good real world pitcher, and on a short slate and in a good matchup, I think that's enough to make Allen a tremendous value play at 84 and the top cash game play of the day. Allen is at home facing the A's, and obviously we're going to love that. The A's are especially rough against lefties. Their WRC plus there is 90 with a 122 ISO, and that does up the appeal in Allen quite a bit. And again, the real world output for Allen has been very good. He has a 3.95 ERA. His walk rate is low, so he's been solid overall. The strikeouts have not been there. He has a 22% mark so far. Now, there is some hope that that number could go up because his swing and strike rate is 12.1%. So maybe there's upward mobility in the strikeout department. And again, the matchup helps here too. Allen did have 10 strikeouts in one game. He's had 8 in 2 other games, so he can have upside. I just think there is a clearer path to a huge game from Snell than there is for Allen. So if you want to go Snell and cash, I get it. Personally, it makes me a little uncomfy to do that. If you want to go Allen in tournaments, I don't blame you. But for me, the preferred allocation of these guys is Snell for tournaments, Allen for cash games. I think Allen is definitely a play for tournaments too if you want to deviate from Snell as a chalk. But I think those two guys are your top options, depending on the game type. So having Allen as our top value means our third pitching slot can be either a stud or a value play. And I think that decision comes down to Joe Ryan at 10.5 and Aaron Nola at 93. Nola facing the Braves after that postponement last night, and Ryan gets the Red Sox. Both those matchups stink. But Nola's salary is $1,200 lower. And I think that's going to put me on Nola for tonight. I do think that Ryan is at least a consideration given how good he's been this year. We talked about Nola pretty extensively yesterday, and that game again got rained out. So won't dive super deep here, but peripherals for Nola are improving after what was a pretty rough start to the year. His skill interactive ERA in 10 starts with more sinkers is 3.55. He has a 27% strikeout rate. So you put that in with the matchup and stuff like that. I have Nola projected for 6.9 strikeouts tonight. Ryan's at 6.2, so about 0.7 strikeouts lower. And again, his salary is higher than Nola's. So with Nola, the safety is not there. But if you're looking for safety, you're talking cash games, and that's where we go to Allen. So I'm looking for upside, and I think to me, Nola would be the next guy up behind Snell. I think for tournaments, I would go Allen above Nola as well. So ranking for tournaments is Snell 1, Allen 2, Nola 3, followed by Ryan. And ranking for cash games is going to be Allen 1. And I don't really know who the second option is for cash games, but Allen 1 definitively there. Let's go now to the stacks. We're not going to have a things to watch for today because we'll talk about the late slate instead. So let's talk about some stacks and some teams to consider when you are filling out your hitting slots over on FanDuel. The Diamondbacks are facing Jake Irvin, and Irvin has shown some signs of improvement recently, but I still think that Arizona is going to be the best stack. The big shift for Irvin has come in his past 3 starts, where his velocity has increased a pretty decent amount. That's primarily on his four-seam fastball, but he's also been on his sinker occasionally as well. And it's worked out pretty well because we saw Irvin have a really great start last time out. That was his second best start of the year. He let up just a 13% hard hit rate in that game, which brings his season-long mark down to 35%. So he's actually been pretty good in that specific department this year. He could duplicate that in this game, and if he does, it would hurt Arizona for sure. But that super low hard hit rate game came against the Marlins. In the start before that, we saw Irvin struggle a bit more. He had just 1 strikeout compared to 3 walks. That game, the one before the Marlins game, was at home against Arizona, the exact same situation that we have for today. And now they're familiar with his stuff because they just saw him about 10 or so days ago. They didn't hit him very hard there. And again, that's broadly been a skill of his this year, but Arizona, really solid offense with a 113 WRC plus against righties. It's the best matchup on the slate. I think there is enough here to make Arizona pretty easily, at least to me, the top stack on the main slate. When we're looking at the Arizona offense, we do want to prioritize base stealers because the Nationals have let up the fourth most steals of any team in baseball this year. And Arizona obviously will run not just Corbin Carroll, but Geraldo Perdomo has been batting leadoff recently, and he runs. And also there's some power in his bat too. So Perdomo, I think a fantastic play for the main slate. Ketel Marte will run. His power is picking back up. And Alek Thomas just came back up from the minors. He'll run too. So Arizona, I think both for the matchup and for the base stealing, really fun stack for today. Even if they don't go for a ton of power, they could still pay off via their legs, which is always, I think, a pretty enticing thing for daily fantasy. Number 2 stack is the Twins. Their offense has been pretty rough against lefties, and they're facing one today in Brandon Walter, making his big league debut. But I do still think we want to give the Twins a look for today. The Walter is going to follow Ryan Garza as an opener. I guess it's not official. Walter will be the bulk reliever, though it sounds like he still will be. But I'm assuming he will be. Walter not lighting it up down in AAA. His strikeout rate down there, 22% with a 9% walk rate, and he was letting up a lot of hard contact. That all led to a 6.28 ERA in AAA with a 4.61 xFIP. The numbers in AA last year for Walter were really, really good, but they also came as a guy in his age 25 season facing, for the most part, batters who were younger than him. It does seem like Walter will get some ground balls. He had a big ground ball rate in past years, but the fly ball rate this year at AAA, at least manageable at 30%. So he could do well given they have no big league tape on him. But overall, Walter does profile like someone we can stack against. So I'm fine doing so for today, even with an offense that has not lived up to expectations thus far and has been a pretty big disappointment. So the Twins, to me, the number 2 stack behind Arizona. And the good thing here is if you want to get to Blake Snell, the Twins make it a lot easier because nobody on this team among the hitters has a salary above $3,000. Byron Buxton finally showing some life the past 2 nights. He had not done so since he came off the IL. We've talked about Carlos Correa's improvements. Those have largely stuck. He's cooled off a bit here recently. And Royce Lewis has hit a barrel in back-to-back games. So I think the Twins grade out decently in this spot. They did release Kyle Garlick, a guy who can hit lefties pretty well, or DFA'd him. So one less guy who hits lefties well, but still think the Twins are the number 2 stack here behind Arizona. That's the Snell stack, the one where you're trying to save some salary. If you go Allen, you're going to have salary to burn. Obviously, you can put a lot of that onto onto Arizona because Corbin Carroll's salary is pretty high and other guys are too. But we could have salary to burn with Allen. And I think we could funnel that salary toward the San Diego Padres. They're facing Alex Wood today, and the park factor is pretty terrible, but the matchup works. Wood is kind of an odd duck, where last year, his results were really bad, but the peripherals for him were good. This year it's flipped, where the peripherals are worse, but the results are better. We have seen some blips in the results as well, though, because Wood let up 6 earned runs to the Pirates at home in his final start before he hit the IL. Came off last week and held the Dodgers scoreless for 5 innings. But in that game, he let up 2 barrels and had a 54% hard hit rate against him in that game. For the full season now, the hard hit rate allowed for Wood is 40%. He's letting up more fly balls than he used to as well. And the Padres hit lefties, 114 WRC plus and a 198 ISO. So looking at this third stack, it was between the Padres, the Guardians, and the Nationals. I'm just going to go with the good offense. So we'll go with the Padres here. And I think, again, if you go with Allen, you can get to the Padres, stack them pretty easily. And if you do go Arizona as your other stack. Clearly, the building block here is Fernando Tatis Jr. I don't need to sell you on that, but I also want to get to Juan Soto here. Obviously, it's a lefty-on-lefty matchup, and Soto's numbers against lefties are muted the past couple years, but he's not going to face lefties the entire game, and he does have good plate discipline numbers, and he puts the ball in the air. Those are kind of the things you look at. So the power numbers haven't been there, but he hasn't been atrocious against lefties by any means. So to me, Tatis is the top priority here. And then I think the number 2 priority is between Soto, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts. We think of those two more against lefties than we do about Soto, but I think Soto is very much in that discussion. So don't just gravitate towards Machado and Bogaerts because they're righties. I think Soto is right there with them as far as a consideration for today. Let's go with some dinger picks here for the main slate. The boring one, I got to go Byron Buxton. It is warm at Target Field for today. Buxton barrels in back-to-back games, similar to Royce Lewis, and it's my guy. So Byron Buxton, the boring home run call for today. The fun one, I want to go Alek Thomas. It's not a lock that he plays because I think he has ever since he got called up, but it's not a lock that he plays. But if he does, he hit the ball really well in AAA, has looked good since coming back up. So I like Thomas a lot. If Thomas does not play, I would go Geraldo Perdomo. Just 5 home runs so far this year, but the power number is pretty good. Maybe we get inside the park home run or something like that. So home run calls, Byron Buxton, Alek Thomas. And then if Thomas does not play, we'll go Geraldo Perdomo as the alternative. That wraps up the main slate, but let's talk here about the after hours slate for tonight. And technically over at FanDuel, there is no slate posted as of yet, so we're talking hypotheticals. But should be 3 games with lock at 6:40 p.m. Eastern. My favorite pitcher here is likely to be Mitch Keller, although I would say Braxton Garrett is in that discussion should Garrett have a much lower salary than Keller winds up having. I just like Keller's pitch count more. I've got Keller projected for 100 pitches, whereas Garrett is 85. These guys are facing each other. So Garrett facing the Pirates, Keller facing the Marlins. Garrett's still projected for 6.9 strikeouts, which is a very high number, but for such a low pitch count, but I get how he gets there. Keller's at 7.3 strikeouts, Shane McClanahan 6.6. So Keller, my top pitcher on the after hours slate, but if Garrett's salary is a lot lower, I don't mind giving him a look as well if you're multi-entering, stuff like that. The top stack has to be the Rays. They're facing a bullpen game for the Royals. I'd expect Austin Cox to get a lot of work here, and he's a lefty, and the Rays have smoked lefties, so it's the Rays against the bullpen that we don't fear too much, so I think the Rays are the top stack on the after-hours slate by a wide margin. I'm also okay stacking the Mariners again, despite what happened last night. They're facing Domingo Germán today, who is really struggling right now. He's been trying to throw more sinkers, and the results have lagged in that time. It's a great park for home runs, so the Mariners, disappointing last night, but do still think they're a good option here. So top pitcher, Keller, although potentially Garrett in play there. Top stacks going to be the Rays and the Mariners for the after-hours slate. That's all we got here for today on the solo shot. Again, get those lineups in for the main slate with lock set for 1:05 p.m. Eastern for today. We'll be back once again tomorrow to break down a full Friday slate. Again, as always, make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on the FanDuel YouTube page and download the FanDuel TV Plus app to get this, plus covering the spread and all of the awesome FanDuel TV shows. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Friday's slate. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.